Hello, everyone, or Miss Benzie. It's Storm, and I am here for Excel report number 3. In Excel report number 3, this is going to be scenario number 1 that I'm going to talk about first, and we're talking about theoretical and empirical probability. All right, so theoretical probability is the mathematical probability of data. For example, if there is a 50-50 chance of an event occurring like flipping a coin, that statistical chance, 50-50, is our theoretical probability. Theoretically, there is a 50% chance of heads and a 50% chance of heads. The empirical probability is the actual outcomes of the data. So say I flip the coin 3 times, 4 times, and I get 3 heads and 1 tails. That is my empirical probability. Now, in my sentences, obviously, I used a different example, but anyways, they're neither here nor there. Now, the law of large numbers states that the larger our data set, is, the more evenly distributed our data will become. Thus, the empirical data will become more evenly distributed as the sample size increases. For instance, here I have 6 die rolls here in this chart here, and you can see that we used our random between 1 and 6, and there's not a whole lot, you can't really tell a whole lot from this, and here's the product. There's no real curve, there's no our bell-shaped curve, there's no real I drew a blank, can't think of the word, but you can understand what I'm saying. Here we got 60 die rolls. I put rows, but this should actually say rolls. Brain fart. So, oh Lord. Anyways, I'll change that before I submit it, Miss Benzie. At any rate, now here we have 600, and you can tell that we're getting to see some of that distribution here. Now, then 6,000, you can tell it's almost right on. And the reason for our curve like this is because of the different ways that you can roll a 12 versus the different ways you can roll a 1 and everything in between. There are more ways to roll a 6 than anything else. There's only one way to roll a 12, and there's only one way to roll a 2. Excuse me, I said 1, but I meant 2. You get snake eyes and double 6s. Those are only 2 ways to create those 2 numbers. Now, as you get closer in, there are different combinations of numbers that will get you, for example, 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and so on and so forth. Next, we talked about binomial experiments. Let me see if I can find my 5 sentences so I can discuss that real quick. Oops. It looks like I forgot to write my 5 sentences. So what I'll do is I will pull up the assignment, and I will actually just try to answer them from there. I apologize. Almost there. All right, so for scenario number 2, binomial. All right, so define the relationship between binomial distribution and normal distribution. So for binomial, for binomial experiment, we need a fixed number of trials each trial have to be independent of one another, and there can only be two outcomes. The probability of each the probability of each outcome must remain constant from trial to trial. All right, so here in this chart, you can see the probability of winning money on a scratch off. Here, winning $10, winning $15, winning $20, so on and so forth, down to 100. And as you could see, there is a 76% chance to not win anything, actually go in the negative because you spent $5. There is a 11% chance of winning $5, meaning you won a $10 scratch off on a $5 ticket. And then as you go down, it's just astronomically low. Now, according to our expected outcomes, we are not going to win very much money at all. If we had our probability of large numbers and we just kept buying lottery tickets, kept buying lottery tickets until we won this $100,000, we're going to spend so much money that in actuality, once we have won this $100,000, we've only gained 7 cents. So that's what our expected outcome is. Law of large numbers says that for a $5 ticket, the seller is going to net about $2.06, where the buyer is going to lose $2.06. And so if you times that by, 5 million tickets, you get $10,293,698.28. And so now I wanted to talk about the Arkansas Lottery and our other 3 states here that we have in here. Arkansas Lottery has an operating, so I couldn't find any exact numbers. I put this down here, appropriated, which means this is the total revenue that the Arkansas Lottery actually generates, but the state of Arkansas only appropriates $179,100,000 to that branch of the government, the Office of the Arkansas Lottery, which is actually a government entity. So here we have operating expense just to keep the place running. I couldn't find any exact numbers of where the rest of this money went. It just, when I went to the website, and this actually came from this Arkansas State website, but for Arkansas Lottery, what is appropriated for that division is $179 million. But the total revenue is almost $450 million. The operating expense here, the mass majority of that money goes to operating expense, and the amount paid to scholarships actually I would consider pretty high. $85 million goes towards scholarships, and I pulled from Texas. I spent a lot of time in Texas. I lived in Texas for a while, and pulled some percentages from the website. 63%. Now this said lottery winners, but I'm willing to bet that this is actually operating expense, kind of similar to what this is. 63% goes to operating expense. 27% goes to Texas education. 5% for retail commission. 4% for administrative software. And I thought this was interesting. They actually give almost 0.5% to veterans assistance. So I thought that was pretty cool. Colorado, however, their lottery winners, they give back almost 70% of what they generate. Now, proceeds distribution. This is where the money they give 23%, 24% nearly, and that is represented by this number right here. And I want to actually sum these up because I'm curious. So $140 million is appropriated for these for organizations: the Great Outdoors Colorado, the Conservation Trust Fund, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. None actually go to education. It's all for, I guess you get a very, very, very small percent that actually goes to education. And I highlighted and read what goes to education. So $4 million in Colorado. I couldn't get actual numbers here for Texas, but 27% of what comes in. And then here, I didn't get a percentage here, but 85 million, which is a pretty good chunk here. You know, I would wager pretty close to 30% here. All right, so moving on to scenario number 3, the Z-curves probability and American BMI. So BMI, or body mass index, is how much body fat you have comparable to your height. The confidence interval for females in relation to BMI is here. 15.4 plus or minus 15.4 plus or minus 40. And that is, well, it looks like when I copied, I actually cut instead of copied. So we'll copy here. We'll put it back in there. All right. So, and the confidence interval for men is 19.54 through 38.46. I have a body mass index of 24.3, which puts me almost at a 1. Almost at a -1. So I am right here. So almost 15%, only about 15% are going to have a lower BMI than me, and about 84.20% are going to have a larger body mass than myself. Approximately -1. I think that is very important. So in Arkansas, 35% of Arkansans are obese. So this means if you live in Arkansas, there's a 35% chance that you are going to fall somewhere outside of a z-score of outside a z-score of +2, or outside a z-score of +1. And here are some of my calculations here. And here I've highlighted all of our BMIs. Okay, all right. I think we're back. Sorry about that. My having a little technical difficulties here. I apologize. All right, so here I highlighted all of our z-scores here. Moving on, talking about scenario number 4, simple interest and compound interest. And I actually knew a little bit about this before we started because I just recently bought a house in November. So yeah, I did a little research, and I actually found out that if you pay one additional house payment a year, so whatever your house payment is, I did the calculations on my house, and it will save you almost $50,000, and I think 4 or 5 years on a 30-year mortgage. So I bought my house at $120,000, And this income tax season, I actually paid an additional $1,000 towards my principal. And because of the way compound interest works, you're reducing the amount of principal that's getting, or simplest rather, the way interest works in the mortgage is you're reducing the amount of that's getting of interest on that principal amount. It is reducing the amount of interest that you get on that principal amount. And if you do that every single year, it roughly ends up being about $50,000 is what I've calculated for me personally, paying an additional. And you can break it down like we did here, and break it down into an additional, $100 a month, or 100 additional 130, whatever it is that we broke down here. But interest is what you're charged for borrowing money, and it exists because borrowing money is an inevitable part of life, and you can't expect to get anything for free. If you need money to buy a house, your bank can loan it to you, but of course they need to make some money. So simple interest means that you only pay interest on the original principal, and compound interest means that you pay on the original principal and you gain accrued interest on interest already accrued. So for example, you borrow $4, there's an interest 25%. You are that first year or the first day or whatever it is, that interest accrues. It's $1. 25% of 4 is 1. And then you add that, and the next time that interest is going to be applied, it's going to apply to the 4 plus the $1 of interest, so 5. So it's actually going to be, instead of a 25% of 4, it's going to be 25% of 5 now. So that's compound interest. Knowing what we know about interest, if we make an additional mortgage payment, it reduces the overall compound interest, and we save several $1,000s. Finally, subsidized student loans are loans that don't accrue interest while you're earning your degree. So 4 years while you're in school, you don't have to pay. It doesn't accrue interest. This $12,000 doesn't accrue interest. The unsubsidized will accrue interest, and so you end up paying more in the long run. Even though you don't have to pay on it while you're in school, it is still accruing interest. So it's always better to go subsidized. All right, finally, scenario number 5, gathering data from populations. All right, when taking a sample of votes to learn about voter population, you have to be careful which method you use. Random is best. Stratified can be good if your sample is evenly distributed. For example, if you have a good representation of Republicans, Independents, and Democrats in a clustered area, you can get a stratified cluster of that specific area. Or maybe I'm thinking of clustered. At any rate, volunteer sampling is convenient, and convenient sampling are almost always going to give you incorrect data. For convenient sampling to be effective, you'd have to have your question fit your convenient place. For example, if you wanted to learn about the most popular exercises from by active people at a gym. So it would be convenient to just go to the gym and ask people who came in what their favorite thing to exercise would be. If you don't use correct sample collection method, you can skew your data in a direction that's not consistent with your entire population. So here we talk about U.S. political affiliation. We took that data and we created a couple charts showing the approval rates of the president here. Republicans love him. Basically, everyone else are not fans. So a large percent of the population are not fans of President Trump. And here we took and found some data about, how many women who were in the military that were not, Air Force, Marine, or Navy. Military women who were not Air Force, Marines, or Navy. Army recruits or Army totals that were not men. Women who were not in the military, or excuse me, women who were not Marines, military, the amount of military Americans by population. And so we just took our data and created a couple charts based on that. All right, and finally, scenario number 6, we had a little fun with this one. 3D graph is the use, 3D graphing is the use of numbers on a graph to create three-dimensional images. The number represents points on the graph, and connecting all those points creates a 3D image. When you change one point, it can change the image, and the point appears in a different location. So I'm going to change this point kind of drastically. So I used 2s and 3s and 4s in this data. So if I throw an 8 in here, whew, look at that. It changes my data to create a little maybe a pyramid here. See if I can click here and do some rotating. Well, at any rate, that changing that 1 point changes the data drastically. And so there was a 1 there. We'll put it back in. And I'll just change it to a 3. Now, see, because we have 3s and 4s and 1s, changing that one piece of data doesn't really change the art perspective a whole lot, because it's already pretty similar to the rest of our data. That 1 back in there. And so I created this little neat piece of art. And then this little neat piece of art, using these sets of data. So that is our perspective 3D art and digital media. So that was my presentation for the Excel report number 3 and our 6 scenarios. So finally, thank you, Ms. Benzie, for understanding. Work has been crazy hectic, so I appreciate you letting me turn in a couple days late. I really do appreciate that. And thanks for everything you've taught me so far. All right, have a good day.